Come on, LSS, Papa needs something new to discuss. Yeah, no, so no more news regarding metrics just yet. It's mainly focusing on worlds. Hey everyone, I'm Clue, and I don't really discuss play nor the financial aspect. So what does that leave? Well, an amalgamation of thoughts. And seeing as, like I just said, there's no new articles regarding metrics just yet, it looks like we're going to have to circle back to the main article and discuss the expansion slot a little bit further, right? Because I've spent some time thinking about it, and altogether, I don't like it as much as I did when I first read it, right? There is some glaring issues that I kind of want to point out and get your thoughts and opinions, right? I might be completely wrong, and I'm happy with that, right? If I'm wrong, that's a good thing. If I'm not, though, right, maybe it warrants a little bit more discussion and a little bit more thought. So the big thing that we're going to draw our attention to is the 1 in 15, right? So 1 in 15, face value, seems great. But if you dig a little deeper, if you think about it a little bit more, it's not so good. So what do I mean? Well, 115 isn't 115 because we have three distinct card types, right? We have our lore cards, cards that expand the story of Wraith, our tournament cards, cards that expand the current tournament pool, and then, of course, the key reprint cards, right? So we have three distinct card types, meaning that to find any card from these specific pools, right, it's not 1 in 15. It's technically 1 in 45 if we start looking at the statistic probability of things. And for me, that's where it starts to fall apart a little bit, right? So this just blanket statement that the expansion slot is 1 in 15. There's lots of different ways you can interpret it. Again, face value, all these are equivalent, right? All of them are 1 in 15, and therefore we get to that 1 in 45. Now, what I personally hope is they're not equivalent, right? And that 1 in 15 is also an average of the card pools. I'd like to see lore cards a lot more apparent, right? Obviously tournament cards, the middle ground, and then the key reprints a little bit rarer. But if that's not the case, this is where the big issue stems from, right? Because at 1 in 45, if we start digging into what these slots actually do, well, there's the big issue. So we'll start off right at the top, the lore cards. Now, my issue with the lore cards is they're going to be a hit or miss, right? So you've got a few different possibilities, if you will, at least for me, that come to mind. So one, they're loved, and they attract a premium to them, right? People trade them, people buy them, people collect them. That would be great, because it means that when you find one of these cards, right, they should hold value equivalent to the other two cards, meaning that if you don't necessarily want a lore card, right, you can trade it in for one of the cards you do want, right? It has some equivalence to it. The other issue, right, is they might be loved, but they might not attract any value because people don't necessarily want to go out of their way to collect them, but if they find one, they're happy with them. This is the somewhat of an issue part, right? Because if they're not equivalent to these cards, if they're not equivalent to trading into any of these cards, right? So for instance, think of it like a common cold foil. Common cold foil can't net you the majority of rare cold foils. Yes, there's some that are equivalent because just like the common slot, they don't really see play, but often they're not equivalent, right? So it's a dud cold foil, if you will, right? If this card is a dud expansion slot card, simply because you can't trade into it, again, it might be loved, but you can't trade or equate its value to something you might actually want or the majority of players might actually want, then it's just weighing down the expansion slot. And then we have the expand the tournament slot, right? So the issue with this slot is at 1 in 15, right? It's already more rarer than a majestic card, right? Yet these are going to be the playable cards, the viable cards, the cards that people want in the moment. So the issue is, what do? Do they end up printing legendary specializations, make them really niche and unique, so you don't need a lot of them? Or do they make a generic majestic where everyone wants 3 of it, right? If everyone wants 3 of it, at 1 in 15, again, if we equate it to 1 in 45 because you're cycling through the different card pools, to find a full play set of these cards, well, we're going to have the exact same issue we have with Command & Conquer, with Alliance Strike, with Warmongers as it's currently rising, right? It's going to have a lot of pressure on it to be an expensive card slot, right? So again, there's no chance that the lore card, right, could equate its value. So you find a lore card, you're not going to be able to trade into or trade for a card that, you know, this might be the slot what you're actually looking for, right? So that diminishes searching or fishing for the expansion slot, right? So again, pushes everyone to singles market, but then you also have that issue of how does everyone get the cards they want for the tournament, right? If it's limited to 1 in 15 / 1 in 45, then there's going to be a lot of issues that amount from this card pool slot right? That they have been correcting, that they have been working towards fixing in terms of Flesh and Blood, right? Because these might just become the most valuable cards because of play. And that's not necessarily what Legend Story Studios want, right? Given their track record, given how much they're trying to correct cards like the Spring Tunic. It just seems a little bit dumb, personally, for them to print a card that, again, is meant to expand the tournament card pool, therefore be viable, but be 1 in 15, be rarer than the Majestic slot. And at worst, be even rarer than that. And then we have the reprint slot, right? Now, what's interesting to me is to think about the longevity of this, right? So right now, the Spring Tunic is a great example, right? Because it's a card that, you know, a lot of people would agree needs a reprint. But once we get past the initial block, right, in Monarch through FFS, right, obviously New Horizons is probably what comes to mind, right? But then you get to Uprising through Outsiders. Can you personally think of any specific legendary that desperately needs a reprint? That will need a reprint in the future? I mean, maybe from Dusk Till Dawn, maybe some of the Assassin equipment, but generally speaking, I think a lot of them, you know, hold around the legendary value that we're happy for them to hold. So the longevity of it is, again, they've been correcting this problem of reprints, of having high power cards versus their scarcity. They've been correcting that for a long time now. So is it necessary for them to introduce this aspect to reprint cards when, again, they've been correcting the problem through alternative means? From looking at TCG Player, the biggest legendary that is shown, sorry, that phrasing was horrible, the most expensive non-chase variant legendary that I could find was a Flamescale Furnace. There we go, much better, right? So sitting at 73, 72.50 at the moment, okay? So does that need a reprint? Debatable, right? It's not really equivalent to the issue surrounding the Spring Tunic. It's not really equivalent to the issue that was surrounding the Crown of Providence, because again, it's already a niche card, or even New Horizons in the fact that, you know, we have a Lexi, or I should say Ranger dominated format, and where New Horizons is so critical to play because of its effect, right? Flamescale Furnace is good, but it's not, you know, a dependent to just boosting your character to the next level, like New Horizons. So again, in future sets, right, not necessarily in Bright Lights, right, as it stands now, I'm sure there are plenty of cards that we can all think of that do deserve, you know, reprints, but in future sets, right, how are they going to handle this? Because again, they've been working to correct pull rates. They've been working to adjust how the secondary market feeds into cards, right? Again, I want to use Dusk Till Dawn as a prime example. We have, you know, the Chase Coldfall variants doing well, right? Because they come in extended art, they stand out from the rainbow foil, and there's not all the different variants. And then the rainbow foil itself, they're easier to pull, or at least they feel easier to pull. There's a greater chance that you're going to find them in loose packs, loose boxes, so that encourages people to open smaller batches, to actually, you know, open product. And going forward, will we need reprints for those sets, right? A big thing that I've talked about before is the future of the history product, right? Because right now, History Product 1, yes, was necessary. History Product 2, a little bit less, but still somewhat necessary. History Product 3, right? At that point, once we're touching the Fab 2.0 sets, do we need a history product? A core set possibly could be nice, but I think there's better ways for them to handle the core set idea than going with the history products. So altogether, again, these 3 slots, everything on face value seems good, right? That's what we're all thinking. But the more you think about it, the more you rationalize it, the more you connect the dots. Again, the pull rates, right? Cycling through the cards, you know, from face value again, this is probably going to be the most expensive or sought after slot, right? So finding any of these other 2 cards, the chances of a tournament card being equivalent or being able to trade into, you know, a card that you want, right? So if everyone wants a Spring Tunic, you know, they'll be trying to trade in the cards they don't want into a Spring Tunic. The equivalent price value, I don't see it for the lore cards, right? There might be some argument for the tournament cards, but altogether, you're looking for this slot, which then brings us back to that 1 in 45 off of face value. And a Tunic at 1 in 45 again, without factoring in then the actual card pool, right? If they print X amount of cards, you know, then the odds of getting a specific card, you know, change greatly. So there's just a lot of issues I have with this as it stands, with it being this amalgamation of them smashing these 3 different ideas together, right? I think the way they were handling reprints where they were just inserting them into the sets that needed, was fine, right? Did wonders for the Crown of Prophets, having it in Dusk Till Dawn. So they, in all honesty, to me, should have just inserted the Spring Tunic, if it is this issue, into Bright Lights as, again, just a black border, or I guess white border, considering that's the lowest variant we have, just for you to find in the Legendary slot, right? Rather than creating this slot that, to me, the biggest issue I have with it is it's still too variable in nature. Again, just off of face value, the information presented to us makes it look appealing. But then it also raises these questions, and of course concerns about the issues it might raise. Especially, again, I want to zero in on the tournament slot, right? If these are highly playable cards, highly sought after cards that are also not niche, right? So, they're not specializations, even if they're just class specific rather than generic. So there's still that level of segmentation tied to the class over it being a generic, right? But again, if you want 3 of a kind, if it's for the most meta relevant characters, if it makes a character meta relevant, then we're going to have the same issues that are mounted from Command and Conquer, from Lion Strike, where, again, they're going to be too scarce to actually find your playset, right? And they're going to be these high-value cards that create a lot of pressure within the competitive scene to, either find them, buy them, or just inflate them to all hell. And then, the lore slot, same thing. It's sort of the inverse, right? Depending on how these are received, then it's just a dud card within the slot, right? Again, I like collecting the art cards from MTG, so I probably have an interest in finding these, but I know that across the board, not a lot of people do. So if these cards are valuable, right? If these cards don't have any value in trading into the actual cards that people want, then it's just a dead portion of the expansion slot, right? Again, it's like finding a common cold foil. Common cold foils feel like crap at the moment because they don't hold value, right? They're your one cold foil a box, and it's like a 75% chance that you get a card that just is crap, right? It's equivalent to bulk. Altogether, I think that this deserves attention and some further thought, and I'm hoping we get information regarding the expansion slot more so than anything, right? Don't tell me about cards, right? I don't even need to know the cards in them. Just a better breakdown, more information regarding it, right? Because again, the 1 in 15, if it's just face value, all of these cards are 1 in 15, then already you have 3 card pools, and then you have X amount of cards per the pool, right? I doubt there's going to be 1 lore card. I doubt there's going to be, 3 tournament cards. I would expect a decent chunk of cards to hit all 3 of these pools. Maybe not the reprint slot, but the lore card and the tournament card pool, right? I would expect to have a decent chunk of cards, maybe 10 to 20 across the tour, or even further, right? So then your actual cycling through to find X card, right? So again, across the board, not your chance to open X card, but your chance to open X specific card, or to cycle through to find the cards of value. Then it becomes an issue. It becomes a really poorly balanced slot, in all honesty, right? Where the 3 aren't equivalent, right? There's a hierarchy to them. You'll definitely want one of the other, depending again how they do the tournament card pools. This might be the most valuable card in the slot. And altogether, it seems to me like they would have been better suited splitting this up, right? Just having a segment of the set be dedicated to the tournament card pool, right? So you have the main cards from Bright Lights, and then you have these specialty cards adjacent to the set, but not in a specific slot. That again is higher than Majestic when we're being sort of promised, viable cards for tournament play, for competitive play. And similarly, the lore cards, right? Doing the same thing as sort of set boosters in MTG, I think would have been the better aspect, unless, again, they absolutely blow this out of the water and these become the really hot thing to collect. And then, of course, the reprints, I don't think it was broken what they were doing. And if it's not broken, you shouldn't fix it. So in all honesty, they should have just done spot reprints like how they've been handling them. Because again, they have been working towards fixing essentially the problems that this slot addresses. Yet now they've introduced another way to correct it that sort of circumvents or goes against the corrections they've been putting into place. Right? We don't need the high pull rates of legendaries or this or that. If we're going to get all these reprints, if we're going to get the history product, if we're now going to get expansion slot to handle reprints, if we're going to get spot reprints, right? If there's all these different avenues and options for them to reprint cards as necessary, then they can, in all honesty, make them rarer than what they are now and allow them to have a better initial value, or have the original version hold better value than all these reprint variants. Now, of course, again, as I'm also trying to say, it is still very variable. I am trying to be, a bit pessimistic, right? Look at the worst case scenario, if you will, just to, again, point it out, create a discussion. We can go back and forth, have our opinions. You might think I'm completely wrong, and that's completely fine. Yeah, right? I like being proven wrong because it means that, they're outsmarting me, which is great because I shouldn't be smarter than them. They're the company, right? I'm just some random talking about it here on YouTube. But I still think it's worth discussing. I think all aspects of the game are worth discussing to some degree, right? So yeah, let me know your opinion. How do you feel? Right? Actually sit down, think about it. Don't just comment, hey, no, you're wrong. It's exactly what it says it is, right? Think about it for a little bit, please. And yeah, give me your honest thoughts. 1 in 15 across 3 different slots with X amount of cards in the pool with a hierarchy of, again, the expected value of these cards. Again, theoretical. Anyway, hope you enjoyed. See ya.